Next, we'll look at deregulated nutrient sensing. This is definitely associated with aging. Even if we think of individual as a whole, they are taking in less nutrients than they would be in younger cells. Deregulated nutrient sensing involves multiple different pathways. Right now, we are considering that one cellular level. So each of these cells in our body, particularly when we think about metabolism, cellular respiration, and the creation and storage of fuels. If we have fat to be in storage or fat to be released from storage, we will see changes in free fatty acid levels as well as visceral adipose tissue and total body fat composition. All of these changes as we age. We also see some of these nutrient sensing pathway changing in muscle tissue, changing the rate of fat oxidation versus protein synthesis. So again, an issue with the storage and release of nutrients. Things are just timed as efficiently as they used to be. The liver, of course, is also involved in this nutrient sensing pathway. This is a sort of paradox because when we consider that older adults tend to intake less food, also extracting less from that food. Now, there is this hypothesis that I think I eliminated to it earlier or mentioned it earlier, that the more we eat, the more reactive oxygen species that we produce. There is a lot of research showing that older adults that are consuming less, or anyone consuming less actually, consuming less creates less reactive oxygen species, and thus less cellular damage. It's also well known that as we increase our exercise, we produce our own indigenous molecules that act to counteract that, so we can get rid of those reactive oxygen species. There is a decline in nutrient sensing. This is kind of paradox. As there is a decline in nutrient sensing, we also tend to age the cells more because they are getting less. It's necessary nutrients and the right balance. So that creates us a situation we are wanting sort of fit that other and obviously every active areas of research presently in the cell biology. Next, let's look at alterated intercellular communication. As you could imagine, well, think about for a moment of all things that you know about cell communication. Cells come to mind when you think about cell communication. What type of signaling come to mind when you think about cell communication? I'm sure that plethora of things come to mind as you think about all these. Different proteins, cascades, and signaling between cells, signal molecules activating another cascade within cells. So lots of different things become less efficiently as cells age. Particularly, you might have thought about neurons because they are definitely signaling cells and neuro-humoral signaling that occurs between neurons. Definitely, as cells age, this signaling becomes deregulated. We see certain evidence of this as we aggregate cells in whole organs in the aging process. In addition to signaling between neurons, one of these areas that we see a lot of action, so to speak, is in inflammatory reactions. These immune system cells are not necessarily talking to each other in the way that they would be in younger cells line age. So we are deregulating intercellular signaling. In that manner also, we consider the inflammatory reaction increasing. We also can see that they are going to deregulated cell signaling, including things like adrenergetic signaling. So these things become slower. Renin and angiotensin system, you should be familiar with most of this from your understanding of physiology as well as insulin and IGF signaling and surveillance. All of these categories of signaling become deregulated based on some of the inflammatory reaction. Now, another concept that we haven't really spent any time looking at this communication of cells through gap junctions and the concept by bystander effect, which sort of like contingent aging. Where thought gap junctions. As you know, gap junctions allow free passage of ingredients or materials between cells. So what is in the environment of one cell will move through the gap junction into another cell. So you could see now how essentially we are letting these qualities of aging pass from one cell to another. It's not that when one cell ages, cells in this neighborhood tends to age also. The B-standard effect is something you should be familiar with aging. Contagious aging, that's how I will keep that in mind.